Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting for a few more minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes before we start off.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Hi. Yeah, so just waiting for the faculty to come in. She's joining in right now.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Vaibbhavi. How are you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, and thank you for taking the time to come out here today to interact with our students.
Looking forward.
Yeah. I think not too many students have joined in today, but they should be joining as we go along. So I would like to start off right away. All right.
Sure.
And let them join in whenever possible. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another series of the DQ Labs Design Nuances Edu series. The objective of this session is to learn the nuances of a new topic specific to design, architecture, or in this case, fashion. You also get introduced to a new school. And understand their purpose and interact with an expert and absorb the knowledge that they have to share. So we'll talk about the school for about 15 minutes, and then for the next 40 minutes, we'll talk about the topic. And do keep, so the Q&A it depends on the faculty if they'd like to have it along with the talk, or if they'd like to have it at the end. Dr. Vaibbhavi would talk about that. Do keep your microphones on mute and ask your comments or questions or answers to questions in the chat. And do remember to switch your webcams on. If you'd like to ask a question, you can always unmute. You can always raise your hand and you'll be given a chance to unmute and ask your question. Today we have the session being conducted by ADYPU, or Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University, which is in Pune. The School of Design is represented by Dr. Vaibbhavi Ranavaade, who is the professor of ADYPU School of Design. The topic being covered today is on fashion, color, and trim. All right, so that's the workshop that's being organized today by Dr. Vaibbhavi. She's an educator, a researcher, and a designer with over 2 decades of experience. She's been the founding head of the department of various premier design schools in India. She's a design consultant, design education consultant as well and has rich, diverse research experience in the areas of semiotics of fashion, Indian fashion system, slow fashion side of sustainable fashion, and varied apply research for design projects. She's the co-founder and principal designer of slow fashion label Vaibbhavi P. The label is all about providing sustainable livelihoods to Indian crafts persons and promoting Indian textiles worldwide. Her doctoral research with the title A Semiotic Study of the Indian Sari has garnered a lot of interest in the academic community as well as industry. Um, Before we go on to the workshop, if you'd like to find out a little more about this school, we'll be sharing these links in the chat. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be shared on YouTube as well in the chat box. The application link to ADYPU will also be posted there. Very important to note that the applications for 2022 are coming to an end. So if you'd like to apply, this is your chance to apply for this academic year. Over to Dr. Vaibbhavi for her session on fashion, color, and trim workshop. Thank you, Dr. Vaibbhavi, for coming in today.
Thank you, Mr. Dion, for that kind introduction. And I really look forward to interacting with students today. As Sir mentioned earlier, we'd be fine with you asking your questions as in when we go along with the topic, or at the end, it's up to you. I'm fine with either ways. Right? Just that when I share my screen, I will not be able to see the messages. So if you could help me with if there are some questions in the meanwhile.
All right. So let me just activate screen sharing. Yeah, but overall, I think your area of research which is in sustainable and slow fashion, right? Maybe if you could start off with giving us a little background to what slow fashion is, because that seems to be quite interesting.
Right. Thank you so much. For all the young people here in the room, and also I believe some parents would be joining in. Are there some parents in the room as well?
Yeah, there are parents joining in as well. Yeah.
Sure. So a very warm welcome to all of you. And as my school has been introduced, we are Ajinkya DY Patil University in Pune. So I extend a warm welcome to all of you to come and visit us on the website. And if you're in Pune, do drop by on campus. We'll be happy to show you around. And coming to Mr. Dion's question about my journey as a designer and the label, which is a slow fashion label. So all of you are aware about fast food, right? So that's the closest analogy I could bring to you. So as delicious as it sounds, you can't have that every day, right? You need to have balanced meals. Likewise, when it comes to fashion, your consumption has to be more mindful, and you need to be considering its impact on the person who's making those clothes, the person who's wearing those clothes, and also the earth, because all the synthetic fibers, which is eventually a plastic, is not biodegradable and it's reaching landfills. So that's something that we really need to be aware of as consumers, our choices. It's a very empowered position that we are in. So every time, next time you want to go buy something, understand whether what is its ecological impact, how are the people who made those clothes being treated, do I really need that garment, how is it going to add value to my lifestyle, right? How often am I going to wear it? So I think that's a very brief introduction to what slow fashion is about. And if you are more interested, the next week, from Monday until Saturday is called the Fashion Revolution Week, which is a global revolution where there is an awareness being created for people to understand the impact of the clothes that we wear. right? So even at ADYPU, we are having this initiative of a clothes swap where we are encouraging people to give clothes that they've been wearing but no longer are interested or they don't fit into it, but it's still good enough for someone to wear. So they can swap those clothes. And the swap happened on the 12th, and on the 18th, we have a small runway show on the campus where the swap clothes will be worn by people, and just to raise an awareness that every time you need a little change, you don't need to go and buy. There are other ways of borrowing, swapping, mending, passing them on as well, right? So on that note, can we begin with today's topic? Are you all excited about it? So I'm sure I just share my screen while we go along with this, and let me know if it comes through. Okay? Yeah, that's good. Screen is visible.
Yes, it is, madam. You can go on.
Thank you. Thank you. So color, as you all know, is the most, what do you say, easiest element of design that we can perceive, right? Anyone who's trying to look at anything for that matter, color is the strongest visual element that you can associate with. And that's what we're going to talk about. Whether you're in fashion, whether you're pursuing any other design domain, color is something very, very strong. So we're going to talk about color and know a little bit more about it. And when we say trim is an additional element which kind of adds value to the overall aesthetic of a product, whether it is a garment, whether it is a piece of furniture, whether it is an industrial product. So there are various kind of trims used in each design domain, but it has a very, very high value, right? So we're going to look at that bit in today's presentation. So as you were given a brief outline, we can go up and down with the time. That's not so much a concern. As I am from the fashion domain, I'm going to give you more details about the fashion department at ADYPU. But we do offer other programs, which is the automobile design, industrial design, which is called also popularly known as product design, and graphic design as well, right? So you can reach out to us for any other information that you may need. We'd be happy to do that. Okay. So let's go ahead. So when we talk about fashion design, there are various things that come to our mind, whether it is about making illustrations, whether it is the catwalk or the runway. Is it only about forecast? Is it going to be only hand sketching, or are we going to use some computer-aided design? Is there some technology involved? Because a lot of parents would come and ask me that, what's the difference between design and technology? And when some design programs call them as fashion technology and some design programs address themselves as fashion design. So very simply put, every design domain done in the right way will have an allied technology incorporated. It can't be in isolation. The world that we live in is very, very seamlessly integrated. So there will be all forms of AIs and all forms of what you say, 3D printing, and all the technologies that are allied to the particular domain will be a part of the curriculum, right? And also the industry that you're going to be joining. The scale of it will definitely change as we go along. There will be a lot of translation in terms of sewing, pattern making, draping, all of that. Will be some surface development kind of courses which incorporate dyeing, embroidery, printing, so on and so forth. Of course, presenting your design ideas in a visually interesting manner is also equally important. So you learn that bit in the forms of visual communication for your fashion projects. Uh, Understanding the consumer and the contextual aspects of design is equally important. And definitely, as you said, that it's about aligning to the industry. So the manufacturing of it, the costing, how does it get retail, whether it's online, offline, so on and so forth. That needs to be understood as well. And most importantly, sustainability aspects of the design, how slow fashion, livelihoods, eco-friendly aspects of your choice of materials is equally important, right? So with that brief background, we'll move on. So when we come to the fashion design process, I'm going to give you a very quick overview to how it works. So there is an inspiration that I believe all of you understand, or a concept that you work on. And since you're talking of color, color comprises a huge part within that, right? One element of design, and there are so many others, but we talk of color only today. We're talking about then the initial research that goes with your concept. You understand the market to which that concept is going to be pitched and addressed to, filling in those design gaps. Then comes to your design development. You come and ideate all of those concepts, and then you put up a range plan. So a range plan is not just a particular kind of garment, but the entire range in terms of what goes, like the bottoms and the tops and the allied accessories, and if there's footwear, so on and so forth. Then comes the next stage, which is toiling, where you do the test fits. So toiling is the word used in the fashion industry, where you do test fits in a fabric which is closest to the final product that you're going to make. And then the final collection, where the entire look is put together, whether it's through photo shoots or through a runway show, so on and so forth. But for that, essentially, the product has to be ready. Are we good so far? Shall we move on?
Yeah, I think we can move
Yeah.
on. Thank you.
Okay. So coming to the curriculum at ADYPU, so broadly, how do we look at it? So the first year is the foundation program where you learn the basics of design and a quick overview to the other four major disciplines in the undergrad BDS programs that we offer. And how the curriculum be planned largely is there will be some courses which help you think and ideate and bring forth innovative ideas. The other set of programs, courses within the program would be about visual representation and communication of those beautiful ideas that you have. Someone has to be able to, those ideas have to be tangibilized, right? So you put them in an interesting visual format, or whether it is two-dimensional, it is all two-dimensional, either by hand or computer aided, right? The next would be to translate that two-dimensional design into a three-dimensional product, right? Here in case of fashion, it would be a garment. If it's an industrial design, you look at an industrial model or an automobile design, right? Scaled models or full scale ones. Also, you look at how the whole business of the industry that you're catering to operate. So unless you have that understanding, you will not be able to pitch the right design solution for that particular market. And a lot of contextual appropriation, consumer insights, because a design will work only when there are takers for it, right? No matter how beautiful your design is, if it's not meeting the needs of the consumer, it's not so useful, right? So all the effort is not going to be seeing a good alignment. So the complexity of these courses will get more and more intense as each subsequent semester comes up. And there will be some major courses, there will be some minor courses you'll be able to take, there will be some pathways you could decide with the specialization that you choose. But that's pretty much how the entire program will look like, right? So when it comes to fashion, what are the major niche specialisms that you could look at? You look at something which is wearable art. You could look at haute couture, which is very, 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 very niche, and very few French designers have been able to qualify for that. And prêt-à-porter is a French word, and if simply translated is ready to wear, and that's what most of us are wearing, like buying clothes off the rack, right? Or off the website at the click of a button. It's already produced and kept ready to wear. And then there are high street fashion lines and renowned brands and labels, and a whole lot of fast fashion brands would be creating knockoffs from all these original designs, right? Again, different apparel categories are there, which are getting more and more specialized as you go along. So knitwear, sportswear, you might be aware of this new trend of athleisure, and I think the pandemic kind of gave it the biggest boost because everyone was so used to being at home and trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle and not restrict themselves with constricted clothing, and comfort became kind of the prime concern for everyone. That's really great. And we're talking about sensitivity to specific needs for functionality, whether it is for your security personnel or people in specific domains. So all that also becomes very, very important, right? Uh, Various range of job opportunities are there depending on your interests. So anyone who's interested and who enrolls on the fashion design program will be guided through a strong understanding of what a fashion design program is all about, what are the career opportunities, and prepare you for a broad base as an undergrad program, and then help you select pathways which are more aligned to your own aspirations and the industry prospects for it. And there will be mentors on campus who will help you take that decision, right? So these are just a few listed here for you. You could work as an assistant designer, fashion designer, or a textile designer. You could work with retailers if that's your area of interest. You could work as buyers for these fashion corporations. You could work as costume designers, and there's so much content that is being created, whether it's film, whether it's live shows, whether it is the OTT platforms that are coming in. You could work as stylists for particular brands or for celebrities or a particular event per se. If illustration is your forte, you could work as an illustrator. You could also take up freelance projects alongside. Uh, if the technology aspect of garment really excites you, you could work as a garment technologist, you could work as a merchandiser as well, right? So just a glimpse of we were co-partners with the Pune Times Fashion Week, which was held in the first week of April, and so the fashion installation that we put up during the Pune Times Fashion Week. It has fresh bougainvillea dried up and then used as the trim in the installation to bring in the summer, spring summer. So it's all about color, right? How the pastel tints and shades of the pink bougainvillea, and it's never like a pure pink. So there is a bit of red, there's an orange to get those undertones right and its interaction with the organza fabric there. So when you come to ADYPU, what is it that we're looking for? So simply put, there is an entrance test that you would be giving, which is going to look at your general aptitude and logical reasoning. And then when you say that you want to opt for fashion, what is it that you're going to say? That your portfolio need to evidence these things, right? So you say that you have a deep interest in fashion and clothes. So let's see that in your folio by means of your photographs or sketches or something that you've tinkered with. Try to do some DIY things and working with hands. That's most important because you can't make clothes just by imagining them, right? You have to be able to translate that. Of course, you may not know all the details or the technical aspects of it that you will learn on the course, but the need to do something with your hands need to come through. How do you look at things in your own way? So everyone is entitled to an opinion, good, bad, or ugly. But how do you see things? And if you were to make things better, if you think that things are not right, what would you do? So some improvisations there that would be interesting in form of doodles, sketches. If you are into poetry, we'd love to see a piece of writing if that's what interests you. And how do you express yourself, right? So photography, all that could be a part of your folio. How observant are you towards looking at things around you? So there's a difference between seeing, observing, and looking. So we like to see that in your folio. That would be interesting. So please share your folios with us. And how up to speed are you with trends? So now in today's time, you can't be saying that I'm interested in field and I'm too busy writing my board exams. I live in a remote town. Those excuses no longer work because all of us have a smartphone in hand. All of us have some leisure time in a day, and if we are interested in something, we'll find our way to know what's happening on it, right? So if there's been a specific event that's happening, what are people wearing for that? Why are people angry about a certain decision that people have made towards a close? Why do people have say on things? Why do people just about anything? You could be agreeing with it or disagreeing with it, and that's totally fine. But what's your take on what's happening in the industry, and not just clothes, but the entire gamut of what's shaping popular culture in these times, right? And what's your interest in simple joys of life? You don't need to be doing really extravagant artworks or taking part in like really professional level competitions and things. That's not the expectation. But how do you look at things in your everyday environment, in everyday life around you? That's something that we'd be keen to know and understand what are your other interests, because design is not something which is very linear. So a lot of things that happen in life around us, that's kind of influencing who we are and the people we are soon going to be. So all these allied interests that you have are going to be need to be nurtured, and that's what we will look forward to once you're on the campus as well, right? So your academic studies, but there are a whole lot of 360-degree learning that needs to come through. So are we all good with this? This is like the broadest way I could have put forward what you're looking at, right? So don't worry that, oh, I didn't start working on a folio from grade one. That's totally fine. Since the time you decided that you want to go, and the fact that you are with DQ Labs, I'm sure you have enough mentoring to go about this entire process. Idea is not to stress you guys, but to help you take informed decisions towards your life. All of us collectively are here to help you take that decision and then make a good career choice and enjoy that as you go along, right?
Right, madam, if I can interrupt here.
Yes, please.
Some of the students are saying that you're not very clear in your speaking. It's going in and out. So if you could probably do something about that. Yeah.
Hello, is it better now?
It's probably better. It's probably a little better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so sorry. You want me to go back to a particular slide,
No,
or
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can continue from here.
Sure, sure. So also when you're looking at the visual journal, so just like a quick glimpse, so it could be your how do you see things around you? So looking at the best corner at home, bringing your reflections on that, uh, energizing time of the day for you. It could be your rituals, like in the morning you have a cup of coffee, or you go for a run or a swim or whatever. So what are those experiences that kind of rejuvenate you to go by your day? If you've been to your native place or you've gone for a holiday or a camping experience, you want to journal that. some films that you've seen, now that things have opened up, with some live performance that you've been able to see. How do you relate with the costumes? You read about something, then you maybe saw a costume interpretation of that, maybe reflections around that. What are people wearing on the streets? What's the vibe like? That's really interesting to look. Whether you're studying fashion or you're going to be studying any other discipline, these things will help you formulate and have a better connect with the society around you, right? And definitely some fashion looks that you'd like to improvise and do some DIY. For fun for now, there's no need to worry about being technically correct or not. It's your story. Right or wrong doesn't really matter. And there's actually no right or wrong in fashion, right? Or design person. It's only how relevant it is. Okay. So then coming back to a whole lot of activities that you could do is by reading to enhance visualization. So you could read fiction, non-fiction, whatever genre that suits you, and try and relate with characters, objects, settings, so on. Again, design is very multidisciplinary. So it could come, your reflections could come from history, culture, psychology, could be business case studies, could be some startup ideas that you might be really excited about, how they put forth their idea, whether it's sustainability related, and how it relates to India and the world overall. How, where does India stand in the current affairs of the world? Right, that's also very important. And how do you see an opportunity for you to apply yourself as you go along? So you can't be as a designer, you can't be in a cocoon or a shell of your own. You need to know what's happening in the world around you. And as I said, if you are into writing or you're into any kind of visual presentation, you could write blogs, vlogs, and reach out and follow people whose ideas resonate with you. You may not be really, I'm not talking about following an individual, but the work, kind of work that they do. That's really important. Finding opportunities to attend webinars, like today you made time on a Sunday morning, and know something more. So please do take up those opportunities, visit museums and exhibitions, as many as you can. And there is the Fashion Design Council of India, which hosts these annual fashion shows, and they are live streamed on their website and the Instagram channels. So you could definitely have a look at them. If you don't have access to see the shows physically, that will happen once eventually you get into the discipline, right? And there are more than 2,000 museums on Google Art and Craft. So you can virtually tour them, and when you have an opportunity to visit the particular city, make time in your itinerary to go visit museums, because that's a treasure trove of how things happened in the world earlier, and we move on from there, right? So you can also send us your portfolio and a couple of sketches and doodles, include some pieces of your writing, some scrapbooking that you've been doing, photographs that you've taken, uh, any styling or fashion makeover project, DIY projects that you've done. Try writing a brief description of how you went about doing that, and models, miniatures, murals, whatever. So we know what's the idea that went behind making it to this place, right? So this is the aerial view to our campus. As I said, I extend a warm welcome to all of you once again. We are very close to the Pune airport. And coming to today's workshop, right? So I'm sure you heard of this term called color forecast, right? Forecast, as very simply put, it is about being able to anticipate a future trend direction based on what's happening in the world today, right? Is my audio clear? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's based on, it's not like out of somebody's whim and fancy that it is done. It's very, very scientific, based on a data that is collected from various sources by a number of people in the team worldwide. And then it comes to a conclusion and they come up with trend reports which say that in the year 2021 or year 2022, these are the things that people are likely to like, and the industry gets this forecast well in advance to prepare themselves. So if you go to the stores, you see a lot of products having these colors. So the last year was about just coming through the pandemic, and it was the illuminating yellow and the ultimate green. These were the two colors in the year 2021. And in 2022, we are talking about the very color, right? Which is the brief description is written here for you. And Pantone is a company, a color forecast company, which does these trend predictions based on a whole lot of scientific data, right? And there are different Pantone colors for fabric and textile, and there are different fabric Pantone colors for print and paper, right? So for each industry, it will be different because the chemicals used in creating those colors are different, and the performance parameters are also different, right? So these are the different colors that were predicted across the years. And I'm sure you've seen, and now you see it more closely when you go to an online shopping place. And there's always a mix. So no one holds you at a gunpoint and say that this is the color of the year and everyone will make only very color clothes this year. No, that's not the case. But that's still going to be a dominant color, and there will be other color stories that were happening alongside. So coming back to very basics color theory, you all understand the basic phenomenon of how do we see colors, right? So I'm trying to describe that visually here, that when light falls onto an object, there are certain bandwidths of color that are being absorbed, and one which is reflected back, and that's the color that your eye is able to perceive. We all know about this, right? And the primary, secondary, and the tertiary colors that are there on the color wheel. And how do you identify a color? So there are three major parameters that constitute a color, which is the hue, value, and intensity. So hue is the actual name of the color, or the what do you say, the wavelength of that color. Saturation is the intensity or the grayness of it, and value is the lightness or the darkness, so tint or the shade of that color, right? Makes sense? And this is how you would see it on your computer screen when you're picking up, right? Lightness to darkness, and then the hue of the color. So now this might seem very basic, but then how does it apply when I'm talking about fashion? So when you say you want to make colored clothes, how will you use this basic color theory, which applies to any design domain or any form of color that you would see? So it would be either dyed, a textile would be either dyed, or a textile is either painted. So here are few traditional techniques that you use, either by using hand techniques or machine techniques, but this is more or less the way you would go about it. So by transferring, like there is a dye paste, and you take a block, put it onto the this thing, and then you transfer it onto the fabric. That's called some direct techniques. Or you take a paint brush, dip it into paint, and you apply that in the way you like, right? There are certain resist techniques like ikat. If you have happened to see that each yarn is tied and dyed at certain parts, and then it is woven into a fabric. So it's a very complex process, and most exquisite ikat techniques we've not been able to duplicate them on machines, because that's the innovation and the skill level of the master artisans, right? On the other hand, we've evolved the machine printing techniques to the next level, where you can just about scan any design that you've made and transform that digitally through a digital print technique. You can print garments, you can print products, you can 3D print products all the way, and all that is available, right? So when it comes to color, as I said, it's the strongest visual element that we can associate with. And when that association happens, there is a certain emotion that gets triggered in the human mind. So there are various color associations that we have with color and culturally determined. So in certain color cultures, there will be, say, if you're talking about the bride wears X, Y, Z colors, whereas there could be extremely opposite colors in the other cultures. So talking about mourning. So in the West, where most of the people follow Christianity, you would see the color of mourning is black. Whereas in India, most places you see the color of mourning being white, right? Then and the opposite being of the bridal color. So what does the bride wear in Christian weddings is a white gown, right? Whereas in Indian weddings, till some time back, uh, in a lot of communities, white was considered inauspicious for a bride to wear. But things are changing. We're breaking those cultural barriers and still bringing in a lot of uh, what do you say, a postmodern deconstruction in terms of visual representation, right? So if we're talking about the recent Bollywood wedding where the bride wears an off-white undertone sari with gold, right? So gold is maybe the Indian connotation to being celebratory or festive or being decorative or regal, so on and so forth, right? Whereas you may not see such profound use of gold in other cultures, right? And also it's a very strong interaction. Sorry, there's an aircraft going off. That's maybe. Yeah. When we talk about skin tones, right? So a lot of racial discrimination based on your skin tones and ethnicity happening in the world, and also people are realizing that that's not how we should look at it, and each everybody is beautiful, and what works for a certain skin tone may not work for others. And fortunately for all of us in India, we have these dusky tones and all these warm, earthy tones that are there in our cultural palette work well with our skin and the sunlight that we experience, and also the kind of the skin tone, the sunlight, and also our environment, right? So it's nothing is in isolation. So if you are attending a wedding, sorry, per se, there is a certain traditional decor that goes with it, the floral arrangements and so on and so forth. All that in interaction gives you like the frame in which that picture is going to be formed, right? So it's not just the clothes in isolation that will ever work, right? Or if you go to a desert like Rajasthan, where it's all barren and very, very for like for kilometers you will not have a sight of greenery, and there are these ladies wearing these beautiful colorful ghagras and walking in that desert, right? So there's like a neutral background and there are these colorful clothes. Whereas you come down south in Kerala, there's so much lush greenery and people are wearing white, and of course people love their gold, so there are gold bands or jewelry to complement. But in that heat and that lush green background, the white looks really nice and easy on the eye, right? So every time you see a new culture or community, kind of understand how it works in the context, right? Also, when in the morning we are taking a decision what we need to wear, uh, it's not just out of this thing, like there are various concerns as to what's easy to maintain, so on and so forth. So if you had like 4 or 5 options in a wardrobe, depending on your mindset on that day, you choose a color for yourself, right? Sometimes we have mental blocks for certain colors. So sometimes uh, like there could be a young girl who has this mental block that she associates white with being very, very girly and feminine, and that's why she would shun that color and use something which is countering that, right? So she'd use all other colors but pinks and reds for it, right? So if does anyone wants to have a comment, it may not be a question, want to say something at this point in time, I'm happy to discuss.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear some questions at this stage. Probably I have something in mind because I used to work in the automotive industry.
Right.
And in the automotive industry, we had a whole full-fledged fashion design department that used to work on the trim or the insides of the, of the automobile. How do they find something that is appealing to such large audiences, right? Because they have a diverse set of people they're targeting, like parents and children and elderly and, people from various backgrounds and cultures. So how do they cater to that?
Right. So again, as I said, the color trends work for each industry. So you see like a new set of colors coming in every couple of years, which guide the automobile exteriors, right? And the choices. So the minty green that you would see in the cars these days, right? So that's again a cyclic thing. Like if you go back to the cars in the 1970s, then you saw a particular shade of green there. So there is a cycle that's happening. So the 70s, 90s, and now again in the 2020s. Right? So it's all based on people's preferences and mindset. So all these forecasters are going to come up with all that data, analyze that out of these broad range of colors, this is what will align with people's mindsets going along. So there are exterior colors, and then the interiors have to like follow through in terms of the design language as well. So again, when you talk about an automobile interior or a luxurious car, if I may say so, it has to align with all those. So in terms of touch, feel, texture, maintenance, performance, so on and so forth, and the technology that is aligned. So the technology that was available in the 90s has come a long way now, 20 years, right? So again, in terms of performance, how you could keep it clean or maintain it in terms of how it performs in terms of weathering, in terms of performance to light. So you know that certain colors, due to inherent the chemical in it, it's going to fade. So you don't use such colors. So all of that is considered, but when you put forth as a story, you're trying to still make it like a visually enticing aspect to it. So, and as you rightly said, design is a very interdisciplinary team. So a lot of fashion designers are involved in the automobile CMF department. And that's also an exciting way to look at it. And the fact that on the school also, we have an automobile design program and a fashion design program. So we definitely have that great opportunity for someone to experience that while on the course before they actually take up the job as well, right? Because you have mentors from both of the disciplines on the campus. So you see some interesting projects coming.
All right, very interesting. Thank you for that.
Okay. So shall we move on?
Yeah, I think we can go on.
So as I said, color also help you kind of express your emotion, and your job as a designer also is to be able to anticipate what's the mood of the times, right? What is it that is going to like when they look at a product that you design? What is the emotion that you're able to elicit from people, right? So whether so this is, I'm sorry for the image, it's a little pixelated, but broadly you're talking about optimism and wearing yellow probably. Somebody who's confident and friendly would wear some peaches and oranges. Red is supposed to be a very bold color and not everyone can handle it. So you want to be careful balancing the amount of red you use in your work. Again, is about the lilacs and the lavenders could be about being purples, about royalty and wisdom and creativity. Blues about strength and power, and sometimes it could be about coolness, right? Green is about being peaceful, about nature, so on and so forth. And how do you interplay with these colors is something that you express as a designer and that comes through your work, right? So as mentioning the fashion industry and the color play that happens and the cultural color palettes as well that you come along. So sometimes the color palette that you've been exposed to from your childhood is kind of informing your color memory. So the more experiences that you bring in your life in terms of visual references will be able to broaden that color palette of the way you will express yourself in the world around you and make yourself more relevant to a larger cross section of people. Do you understand? Am I able to relate to why I'm stressing on this to broaden your color palette? Because this is not going to happen in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 while on the course, but it's a lifelong learning, and that's just one example I'm giving. So the more number of experiences you're going to bring and visually stimulate your mind will help you broaden your creativity and look at things in a more open way, right? So this again, so it's not just the clothes, it could be furniture, it could be your makeup and hair, your accessories. Uh, there is so much to select, and technically there's no color which actually goes out of fashion. Can you? Because you don't have a magic wand to wish away things, right? It's all there in your surrounding. It's just that people will find a newfound what do you say, liking for a certain set of colors, and the other colors will remain in the background, right, in some tone, shade or tint, because there are certain personal preferences also that people have for them, right? So when it comes to a fashion storyboard, this is how you could look at it. There are fabrics, there are visual references. You look at Pantone chips, and then what translates into your life, right? And again, what you draw as color is very different to what you see in terms of a trim or a fabric or the actual dyed thread. So that understanding is also important. So always a color board will have physical swatches and trims as well. So a few more examples of how do you extract a base color, a secondary color, and an accent color in a color story that you will be working on, right? So whether it's, and it applies to every industry. So whether it is an automobile, an industrial product, or a graphic poster, so on and so forth. And every designer is kind of building a signature by the way they use color also, right? Whether they use a lot of mishmash of colors, or they go monochromatic, or they use a few achromatic, like go totally achromatic. So it's and how do they block that color together? So this is Wendell Roderick's collection, where he's used very strong colors, but in his minimalistic way, right? Some more examples of how you build color boards and trim boards. So we don't have the time to actually do a color board, but I'm just going to give you an exercise which you could do at your own time, and that will be fun to explore. Like, so you can bring out all the things that you have at home and that you find visually exciting in terms of the way their color, and try and create an artwork out of it. That will be great, right? So you could identify a theme that you would like to go by. Write 5 words to describe that theme, and then you can create an artwork, 12 by 12 inch size, and to depict that theme, and gather all the colored material, old paper, fabrics, whatever packaging material that you have, some scraps of fabric, thread, and put that together in an interesting layout and see if you can make that board align with your theme. Would you like to do this? It's a fun activity, so whenever you allow yourself that time, please do it. These are some examples of how you could do some mixed media collage. So they just like use the font of a magazine and created a backdrop and made a nice headgear and face collage. Is just somebody might have liked to collect miniature size butterflies pictures and they've made like a whole collage of a butterfly. I'm sure you've done some things like this in the past as your school projects. Now take it to the next level and have a more artistic take on it and use multiple media like your pencil shavings, ropes, spare parts of some broken gadget, toys, right? And have a nice 3D mural kind of an art. You can take an old box and create like a 3D frame out of it, or take an old hat and paint it and have multiple things. So next time you're going on a holiday, you have an exclusively designed hat for yourself. Maybe a wall in your compound. This is a largish project. Maybe 4 or 5 of you all as friends come together and do that as this project together. So this is a tire, like an old tire and all the line objects. Paint that together and make a huge mural. Are you all excited to do something and try something like this? This is called the assemblage art. This is made out of textile scrap. Lace, ribbons, trims, edgings from old garments or just trims lying at home. Torn cushion covers, you want to mend them, right? So I'm very happy to answer your questions as you go along and wish you all the best for adapting to the change and continue being a learner and contribute towards sustainable futures, right? Please feel free to write in a message right now, or you can unmute yourself and ask questions. I'm happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaibbhavi. There's a question from Kaveshri Sridhar,
Yes.
who's asking, how is fashion design related to a fashion show? Can that be a job opportunity or a career out of that?
So there are several. Hi, Kaveshri. Do you want to turn on your camera? Okay,
Or
fine, no problem.
Kaveshri, yeah, if you can probably elaborate on your question and maybe ask your question in a little more detail, you can.
Okay, no problem. I'll try and explain the way I've understood, and then if you have further queries, you could go on. So, Kaveshri, that's a nice question you put forth, and quite an obvious one. So, a lot of people would relate fashion, the study of fashion, to fashion show. So, fashion show is the showcasing part of it. So, there is a whole lot of things that goes behind a fashion show, right? Several people involved in it. So when you say how does it relate to a fashion show, as I said, that's the end. Maybe I won't say even an end. It's the way you showcase fashion to people. But in the 21st century, there are various ways you could reach out to audiences and show your design as well. So it's not only through a fashion show that you could do so. So once you created a fashion product with all the hard work and things, you could either choose to show it on a fashion runway. You could either use Instagram and other social media platforms to showcase your design, create a virtual store. You could also reach out to your niche audience and show your work, right? So, and as fashion, there is a fashion designer, there's a fashion stylist, there's a choreographer, there's a photographer, there is a runway model. There's so many people involved in putting forth that fashion show. So, what is it that excites you? Whether you want to design those clothes, you want to choreograph those shows, what is it that you want to do, right? I hope I've been able to get some clarity for you. Is there something else you'd like to ask, or I've not understood your question properly? Are you there?
Yeah, so she's just said basically job opportunities after completing a degree in fashion design.
Right. So definitely, as I said, I listed so many other things as well. So you could work with a designer, and then that designer could be showing at a fashion show. You could be working with a brand which is going to put forth road shows and elaborate catalogs of the designed range to the prospective buyers. You could be an fashion entrepreneur or a startup. You could be a freelance designer. So there's so many things that you could do after your degree, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just building up on what she's asked earlier, right? How is fashion design related to a fashion show? Sometimes these questions are obvious, but really there's also a veil in front of it, because even though it's an obvious question, getting the answer to something like this is very difficult. Like, how do you make a career out of just fashion shows, right?
So,
um,
yeah, true. And just to elaborate, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
no go Yeah, so what I was saying is that sometimes questions could be quite simple, but they need answers. So if anyone has questions, it doesn't matter how simple it is,
Yeah,
please ask it, because it's a beautiful opportunity to ask these questions.
right. And so what you need to understand is also that while there is a lot of glamour and so-called glamour and so-called limelight that is associated to a fashion show, as I said, there's so many people involved in putting together that fashion show, right? So that means that it requires a lot of money also, a lot of finance that goes into it. So as a business, what you're also going to evaluate is what is the mileage going to get out of it. Are there buyers who are going to place orders at the end of that fashion show? Are you equipped to fulfill those orders that come along? Or is it just 5 minutes of limelight and then what are you going to do? Right? So, okay, you got all the attention on the runway and all of that. Are you equipped to are there even buyers who are going to place orders at the end of it, right?
Yeah, because that's
It's a
that.
business at the end of it, right? There's so much money involved in it. So you just can't be aspiring to have a fancy show and you need to generate more business to support the people who are working for you and have a thriving business at the end of it.
Right. On these slides, if you can go to one of the first few slides where you showed the haute couture and pret-a-porter,
Yeah.
The type of fashion, right? Because that I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Wearable art. Why would people design this concept? I mean, so you see some of these fashion shows where there's some really ridiculous concepts that they wear, and it's not practical and possibly
Right.
something that's not practical. But why do they do that?
Yeah. Do students have some take on that, and then I will take it further from that. Does anyone have any observations on that?
Yeah, I think It would be good to get students' view on this.
Come on, it's Sunday morning. We can speak. Okay. So, very interestingly brought out. So there is something like art for art's sake. Sometimes all these designs, and I do get this often, that what do they do with these clothes? These clothes are meant to create a shock value. They are an expression of the creator, and the same designer could have a pret-a-porter line, which is like a watered down version of those elements, right? Which you could break the look in and start wearing it, right? So somebody made really like outrageous statement through the these avant-garde kind of designs, and then it gets watered down in terms of a graphic on a t-shirt, or a particular design element in the garment, or a particular element goes into some kind of an accessory, right? So it does get watered down. So when it comes to wearable clothes, it's never going to be that, or you just out of the entire ensemble, like for a particular occasion, you might just wear a jacket out of it, or you just wear those statement shoes, and the rest of your look is very minimalistic, right? So you break down that look. The reason why people would associate with it, because it could be some connection with the popular culture, or the angst, or some say against a social cause that they want to garner attention to, and express themselves like that. Or it's just a creative liberty. Like you have these concept cars, right? You never see them on the roads.
Yeah.
That's an idea that's generated, and then you will tone it down to more practical applications and more salability and so on and so forth.
Right, interesting. And so Kavishi also adds to that human instinct to be modern and updated with the latest fashion statement.
Yeah, that's nice.
So wearable art is that concept, right? That's what you
Yes,
mean.
and there is a competition that happens in New Zealand, where designers across the world would be pitching in their wearable art concepts and then putting that up. So you can look at it. It's called WOW, WOW, right? The World of Wearable Art. That's an international competition that happens in New Zealand.
Yeah, some of the time we see, in the races, the horse races at England, they wear these weird hats, right? I don't know
Yeah.
what it's called, but
So
yeah.
it's called the art of making hats is called millinery, and in the early 20th century and in the 19th century, there was this whole emphasis all across the world. People used to wear headgears, right? And there is a lot of cultural denotation that goes with social class, status, so on and so forth, with the art of making different headgears in cultures across the world. And at the races, where the elite of the society would go, and it's a spectator sport, right? You're not actually indulging in the sport. There are jockeys who are playing the sport, and you are either cheering them or whatever. So it was more like an off the runway fashion show, right? Like where real people are wearing those elaborate clothes and this thing. Right.
All right. So wearable art, haute couture, you said, is very specific to very niche kind of designs,
Right.
but more practical than pret-a-porter is the regular
Ready to wear.
ready-to-wear garments, and high street fashion lines for the renowned fashion brands. What does that mean?
When you say high street, so if you go down to what's your main street, MG Road in Bangalore? Where all
say
these
Brigade Road, yeah.
Brigade
That's
Road,
it.
yeah. So all these brands like your international brands like Tommy and your Forever New and Forever 21s and West Sides and Zara's, all of that will be there along. So that is the high street, right? People would like to aspire to buy new clothes. It's affordable also, and they continue to um, wear those clothes on the streets.
Right. Thank you so much. I think that's about it. I'm not sure if we're getting any more questions from anyone. But Professor Vaibbhavi, thank you so much for taking the time out to be
Thank you.
here and explain this concept really well. I think it was a very informative session, and some of the students have mentioned that in the chat as well. So thank you so much for being here. Just before we leave, I'm going to just share my screen.
I'll stop sharing mine.
Yeah.
So do reach out to us at the university if you would like to know more. Mr. Dion has already shared the link with you.
Yes. So this is the DQ Edge page of ADYPU. So whatever information you want is here on how to get into the school and about their programs. And what you could also do is click on this particular link to apply directly to ADYPU, and you should be able to take the test in 2022. So the students for 2023 could just or later could just click on this inquire here button, and your details will be shared with the university, and they'll get in touch with you probably next year whenever required.
Right, and you can also follow us on our Instagram channel, ADYPU_SOD, where we keep sharing our students' work and activities that we have on the campus. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining in, and have a good Sunday. All
Right. Thank you so much for having me here, and all the best to all the students. Bye-bye.
Thanks.